It happened in broad daylight in a place where no one expected danger. The Willow Creek Supercenter buzzed with the usual chatter. Parents haggled over prices. Kids pleaded for candy. Cashiers smiled politely as they scanned endless rows of groceries. No one noticed a little girl in the pink dress vanish between the towering aisles, as if swallowed by the shelves themselves. But K900 noticed. It started as a normal day, a sunny Saturday, late afternoon. Families strolled in and out of the store. The parking lot was packed with minivans and pickup trucks. Inside, the air smelled like popcorn and cinnamon rolls mixed with a sharp tang of cleaning products. Mothers compared coupons. Teenagers scrolled through their phones. And little Claudia, 6 years old, wandered just a few feet away from her mom, her eyes wide at the towering display of stuffed animals near aisle 9. That's when she disappeared. Her mom's voice sliced through the air like a siren. Claudia, Claudia. Panic rippled across the checkout lines. Aisle 9 fell silent, then erupted into frantic whispers. A cashier froze mid-scan. A security guard glanced toward the commotion, unsure whether it was a tantrum or something far worse. Minutes passed, long, unbearable minutes, and there was still no sign of the little girl. The mother's face turned pale, her hands trembling. As she tried to explain to the manager what had happened, she swore, "I only turned for a second, just a second." But in that second, her daughter had vanished without a trace. And that's when the call came through to Officer Luis Martinez. Luis was a veteran cop, mid-30s, worn boots, and a no-nonsense attitude. But today, he wasn't alone. His partner trotted beside him, nose low, tail steady, muscles tense. Hunter, the department's German Shepherd K9, had seen it all. Drug busts, missing persons, even a high-speed chase last summer. But nothing rattled him, nothing except the scent of fear. As they approached the scene, the mother's sobs cut through the chaos. Luis knelt beside her, asking quiet, firm questions, while Hunter sniffed the ground around the cart where Claudia had last been seen. The child's scent was faint but distinct. Vanilla lotion, a trace of cotton candy, the plastic of her toy rabbit. Hunter's ears twitched, his eyes locked on the floor, then darted toward the back of the store. Luis straightened up. Hunter's got something. Hunter's tail stiffened, nose moving in tight, methodical circles. He moved past customers, ignoring the clatter of carts and the murmurs of onlookers, heading straight toward the produce section. Luis followed close behind, his badge flashing under the bright fluorescent lights. They passed a bakery, where a man in a white apron paused, watching them with a strange intensity. Luis didn't notice. Not yet. Halfway down aisle 14, Hunter stopped dead in his tracks, paws braced. His nose hovered just above the linoleum floor. He let out a low, warning growl. Luis's heart thudded. He crouched down, scanning the floor. Nothing, just a piece of crumpled candy wrapper and a faint scuff mark. But Hunter wouldn't budge. Luis leaned closer, his fingers brushing the floor. And there, barely visible, was a pink hair tie, the kind a 6-year-old girl might wear, snagged under the wheel of a shopping cart. Luis pocketed the hair tie, glancing at Hunter. "Good boy," he murmured. Hunter's tail wagged once, then he lifted his nose, sniffing the air again. His ears swiveled like radar dishes. He pivoted toward the back storage area, weaving through the shelves, ignoring the curious stares of shoppers. At that moment, if you're watching the story unfold, we'd like to ask you to subscribe to our channel, Heroes for Animals, for more real-life stories about K9 heroes making a difference in their communities. Your support helps us bring these incredible stories to life. Back in the store, Luis's instincts told him something was off. The security guard on duty, a stocky man in his 50s with a tired face and ill-fitting uniform, approached nervously. "Everything okay, officer?" Luis nodded, but his gaze lingered a beat too long on the man's hands, ringing together, twitching. Hunter's low growl cut through the tension. Luis turned, eyes narrowing as Hunter pulled forward toward the storeroom door. It was slightly ajar, just a crack. Luis pushed. No customers were allowed back there, and yet he pushed the door open, revealing stacks of boxes, pallets of canned goods, and cleaning supplies. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The air smelled damp, a faint whiff of bleach, and something else, something that made Luis's stomach twist. Fear. Hunter darted forward, nose to the ground, weaving through the maze of cardboard. He stopped at a locked metal cabinet in the far corner. His tail went rigid, hackles raised. He barked sharply, a short, explosive sound that echoed off the walls. Luis's breath caught. He reached for his radio, but before he could speak, a loud clatter came from behind him. Luis spun around just in time to see the security guard, the same man who'd approached earlier, bolting toward the exit, his face pale as a sheet. "Stop," Luis shouted. Hunter lunged, barking furiously, the leash tight in Luis's grip. The man shoved a car in their path and disappeared through the swinging doors. Luis's heart raced as he stared at the locked cabinet. His gut told him Claudia wasn't far. Hunter's snout pressed against the metal, his breath fogging the surface. He pawed at the door, leaving faint scratches on the paint. Luis felt a knot tighten in his chest. What the hell was going on in this place? As sirens wailed outside, backup on the way, Luis couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something much bigger than a missing child. Luis's boots echoed against the polished floor as he and Hunter weaved through the crowded aisles, chasing the trail. The store, once buzzing with chatter, had fallen into an uneasy silence. Shoppers stood frozen, watching the scene unfold like a slow-motion movie. Some had wide eyes, others had their phones raised, recording the chaos for social media. Luis didn't have time to care about the stairs or the cameras. His focus was locked on Hunter, who moved with laser-sharp intensity, nose low, muscles tight. Every so often, Hunter let out a low, rumbling growl, his tail a rigid arrow pointing the way. They passed a bakery, shells of bagels and cinnamon rolls untouched, a haze of flour drifting in the air. Luis caught a glimpse of the man in the white apron, the baker, standing stiff, eyes glued to the scene. Luis couldn't shake the feeling that too many people were watching with a little too much interest. Hunter's paws skidded slightly as they rounded the corner near the frozen food section, then stopped abruptly. His nose hovered over a damp footprint, a smudge on the shiny floor leading toward the back hallway. Luis's heart kicked into overdrive. He reached for his radio. Unit 23 to dispatch. Suspect fleeing. Possible child abduction in progress at Willow Creek Supercenter. Request immediate backup. Hunter barked sharply, tugging at the leash. Luis gave him the command, "Find," and the dog surged forward, nose to the ground, tracing the invisible scent trail like it was written in bold neon. They pushed through the double doors into the employee-only area. It smelled different here, less like fresh produce and more like cleaning supplies, cardboard boxes, and the faint tang of oil from the deli fryers. The hallway was narrow, lined with lockers and safety posters. Luis's boots thudded on the concrete, Hunter's claws clicking in rhythm. A door at the end of the hall swung shut. Luis bolted forward. Hunter lunged ahead, his bark bouncing off the walls. Sharp and commanding, Luis threw his shoulder into the door. It gave way with a groan, revealing a dimly lit storage room crammed with boxes stacked to the ceiling. Hunter froze for a heartbeat, nose twitching, then veered sharply to the left. Luis's eyes darted around. Shelving units, a mop bucket, a pallet jack. It all looked normal. Too normal. "Hunter, what do you got?" he muttered, scanning the room. His pulse pounded in his ears. Hunter growled low, circling a stack of boxes near the wall. He sat abruptly, his gaze fixed on a narrow gap behind the shelves. Luis crouched down, peering into the space. A thin strip of duct tape hung from the edge of a cardboard box, fluttering slightly in the breeze from a nearby fan. Luis's stomach sank. He reached forward, pried the boxes apart, and there, tucked between the shelves, was the same pink hair tie from earlier, now tangled in the corner of a blue backpack with a cartoon unicorn patch. Claudia's backpack. Luis swallowed hard, his throat dry. He glanced at Hunter, who let out a sharp, insistent bark. There was no time to waste. He radioed in, voice tight, Unit 23. Backpack found. Possible child in storage area. Continuing search. Hunter moved again, weaving through the maze of shelves. Luis followed, adrenaline buzzing in his veins. Every nerve was on high alert. Hunter stopped at a metal cabinet in the far corner, nose pressed against the seam where the doors met, his ears pinned back, body tense. He barked once, sharp and demanding. Louise gripped the handle, twisted. It was locked. He scanned the area, spotted a set of keys hanging on a hook by the employee break room door. His hands shook as he grabbed them, fumbling for the right one. The key slid in, turned, the lock clicked. Louise swung the doors open. Claudia was inside. She sat huddled in the back of the cabinet, knees drawn to her chest, her face streaked with tears. A strip of duct tape was loosely wrapped around her wrists, but she was breathing, eyes wide and terrified. Louise dropped to his knees, voice soft but urgent. "Hey, sweetie, I'm Officer Martinez. I'm here to help. You're safe now, okay? We're gonna get you out of here." Claudia's lip trembled, and she let out a sob, her small body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Louise gently pulled her into his arms, peeling the tape from her wrists. She clung to him like a lifeline, burying her face in his shoulder. Hunter sat nearby, panting, his eyes watchful but calm. Louise radioed in, voice tight with emotion. "Child, Claudia, is safe. Repeat, Claudia is safe. Requesting medical assistance and child services." Relief flooded him, but it was short-lived because, in that moment, Hunter's ears perked up again. His body went rigid. He stared past Louise toward the back exit and let out a growl, so deep it rattled Louise's chest. Louise turned just in time to see the security guard, the same man who tried to blend in earlier, slipping to the rear emergency door, a dark duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Hey!" Louise shouted, but the man didn't look back. Louise gently set Claudia down, told her to stay with the other officers arriving on the scene, then took off after the suspect. Hunter surged ahead, barking furiously, the leash tight in Louise's grip. They burst into the loading dock, the late afternoon sun blinding for a second. Delivery trucks idled nearby, a few drivers watching in confusion as a security guard sprinted across the lot. Louise's boots hit the pavement hard. His breath burned in his chest, but he pushed through. Hunter barked, lunging, straining to close the gap. The man zigzagged between trucks, heading for a black sedan parked near the edge of the lot. Louise shouted, "Stop! Police!" But the man kept running. Hunter needed no further command. Louise released the leash. The German shepherd tore across the lot, muscles rippling, ears pinned back. His paws pounded the asphalt in a blur of motion. The security guard glanced back, too late to react. Hunter leapt, jaws wide, catching the man's arm just as he reached the car door. They went down hard, the man screaming in shock and pain. Louise reached him seconds later, cuffs in hand. He pinned the man's wrist behind his back, breathing hard, adrenaline roaring in his ears. The man struggled, muttering curses, his voice low and hoarse. "Who are you?" Louise demanded. The man said nothing, his eyes hard and flat like stones. Louise stared at him, then at the duffel bag, half open, revealing rolls of duct tape, zip ties, and a small bottle labeled chloroform. His blood ran cold. This wasn't random. This wasn't just a crime of opportunity. There was something darker here, something bigger. Hunter stood beside him, still growling, his breath heavy. Louise gave his partner a nod. "Good job, Hunter," he murmured, his voice tight with quiet respect. But as Louise looked down at the man on the pavement, he knew this was far from over. There were questions that needed answers, and the real story was just beginning to unfold. Louise kept his knee on the man's back, his cuffs tight around the suspect's wrists, the asphalt still radiating heat from the afternoon sun. Hunter circled close, his hackles raised, eyes fixed on the man like a laser. The suspect groaned, twisting slightly under the weight of the officer, but didn't resist further, at least not physically. "Who are you?" Louise demanded again. But the man stayed quiet, his breath ragged, sweat dripping down the side of his face. His badge, the one that had blended him into the background of the store all day, now glinted under the sun. Raul Garcia. That's what it said. A name that seemed so ordinary in the middle of the big box store, but now felt like a mask. Louise turned his attention to the duffel bag. Its contents sent a chill down his spine. Rolls of duct tape, multiple zip ties, a pair of gloves, a burner phone with no SIM card, and the bottle of chloroform he glimpsed earlier. Not just a kidnapping kit, a calculated setup. He exhaled slowly. Tension coiled tight in his gut. Other officers arrived, sirens wailing as they skidded to a stop. Luis handed the man off to Deputy Gonzalez, who hauled him upright. Hunter sat at Luis's side, tail flicking once, then steady. Luis gave the K9 a quiet scratch behind the ear, grateful for his partner's instincts. Hunter had never let him down. "Get him in the car," Luis ordered, watching as a man was shoved into the back of a cruiser, still silent. His face blank like a man playing a role he wasn't ready to abandon yet. Inside the store, Claudia was being checked over by paramedics. Her mother sobbed, clutching her daughter to her chest, whispering, "Thank you," over and over as if it could make up for the hours of terror. Luis's heart clenched at the sight of the little girl's wide eyes. Her trust in the adults around her shattered in an instant. Hunter stayed close by, lying at Claudia's feet as if standing guard. She reached out a small hand, resting on his fur, and the German shepherd let out a soft huff, his eyes half closed but alert. Luis felt a lump rise in his throat, but the questions were piling up too fast for any of them to rest. Back at the station, paperwork sprawled across Luis's desk like a storm had blown through. He and Detective Jamie Collins, his longtime friend and sharp-eyed partner, sat across from each other, flipping through records, the air in the room heavy with frustration and the scent of stale coffee. Raul Garcia, age 44, no priors under that name. Hired at the store 3 years ago, passed a background check clean. Jamie muttered, tapping a file. "But I got a feeling this guy's been wearing more than just a uniform." Luis nodded grimly. Hunter lay under the table, paws crossed, eyes watching them both like he understood the weight in the room. Jamie leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "It doesn't make sense. Random store employee kidnapping a kid in broad daylight? And with that bag, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing." Luis's mind churned. He pulled out the duffel bag's contents again, laid them out on the table. The burner phone caught his eye. He powered it on, and a single message flashed across the screen, sent just 2 hours before the incident. "Package pickup confirmed. Same location as last time. Don't be late. Luis Brat Isha." Same location as last time. He exchanged a look with Jamie. "How many times has this happened?" Jamie muttered. Luis sat back, rubbing a hand over his face. The knot in his stomach twisted tighter. This wasn't just a random kidnapping. This was part of something bigger, something organized. Hunter shifted under the table, a low, uneasy sound rumbling in his chest. Luis glanced down and caught the dog staring at the bag, his nose twitching, ears pricking forward. "What is it, boy?" Luis murmured. Hunter nudged the bag with his snout, then pawed at the bottom. Luis leaned closer and felt along the seams. His fingers brushed against something stiff. Hidden in the lining, he found a thin plastic envelope. Inside, a handful of old, creased photographs. Luis laid them out. Kids, different faces, different places. Each one no older than 10. His stomach turned to ice. He flipped them over. Names and dates scribbled on the backs. Some names were familiar, filed away in the corners of his mind from old missing persons bulletins. Others he'd never seen before. "Jesus," Jamie breathed, his voice tight. "How long has this been going on?" Luis didn't have an answer. Just then his phone buzzed. It was the captain. "Martinez, we got a hit on Raul's prints. They matched to a man named Victor Alvarado, wanted in 3 states for child abduction, trafficking, and unlawful imprisonment. He's been off the grid for 5 years. Until today." Luis felt a cold sweat break out across his skin. Hunter shifted at his side, his breath slow and steady, but his eyes sharp. Victor Alvarado. Luis stared at the old photograph spread across the table, his mind racing. Each child's face felt like a silent cry for help, their eyes frozen in time. Some smiled wide and innocent, others barely able to hide the fear. Hunter sat at Luis's side, breathing steadily, but the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Victor Alvarado, a man who had been off the grid for 5 years, had been working a cash register at Willow Creek Supercenter. like he was just another face in the crowd. Luis shook his head, a bitter taste in his mouth. He'd seen a lot in his years on the force, but this felt like peeling back the corner of a rotten floorboard and finding the whole foundation infested. Jamie flipped with the photos over, reading the scribbled name and date. Maria S., 7 years old, disappeared June 2018. Jamie exhaled slowly. I remember this case. Out of San Antonio. They never found her. Louis gut clenched. Until now, he muttered under his breath. Before they could say more, the captain leaned into the room, his expression tight. Martinez, Collins, interview room now. They gathered the files, the photos, the duffel bag, and Hunter followed at their heels. The K-9's presence was a steady, grounding force, silent but watchful. In the interview room, Victor, no, Raul, sat slouched in a metal chair, his hands cuffed in front of him. The cheap fluorescent light above buzzed faintly, casting harsh shadows across his face. He looked older under the stark lighting, the lines on his face deeper, his eyes hollow. But there was something else, a flicker of defiant smugness, or just a knowledge of the secrets he held, waiting for the right moment to use them. Jamie sat across from him, flipping open a file, while Luis leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching. Hunter lay beside Luis's feet, quiet but alert, his ears twitching every time Victor moved. Jamie started the questioning, voice steady and calm. Victor Alvarado, or do you still prefer Raul Garcia? You've been busy these past few years. Care to tell us what you've been doing? Victor tilted his head, a slow smile creeping across his face, as if the whole situation amused him. You got the wrong guy, he rasped, voice rough like sandpaper. Luis Patienzas Napat. He stepped forward, hands on the table, voice low but firm. We found the bag, the photos, the chloroform. We have the girl. This isn't going away. You're done. Victor's eyes narrowed, but he stayed quiet. Jamie tapped the table. Where are the others, Victor? The kids. The ones in these photos. For a split second, Victor's expression flickered. Just a blink, but Luis caught it. Hunter's head snapped up, a low growl building in his chest. Victor's hands twitched in the cuffs, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. You think you're the first to try and crack me? Victor sneered. I'm just a piece. You want the whole puzzle? You're going to have to look higher. Luis Pusa Spica. He exchanged a glance with Jamie. This wasn't just a one-man operation, and they'd suspected it, but hearing Victor confirm it sent a chill down his spine. Who? Luis Pres. Who's higher up? Victor leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips. You'll never touch them. They're ghosts. Luis opened his mouth to fire back when the captain's voice crackled through the radio clipped to Jamie's shoulder. Collins, Martinez, we got a problem. We just got a call. A mother at the Willow Creek playground says her son is missing. 5 years old, just like the others. Luis felt the world tilt beneath him. His stomach dropped. Another child already. Victor's smirk deepened, like he just played a winning hand. Jamie shot to his feet, grabbing the files. Luis gave Hunter a sharp command. Let's go. And they bolted out the door. The playground was a small, fenced-in area near the back of the shopping center. Sand pit, swings, a couple faded slides, a place where kids should be safe. But now the air was tight with fear. A woman stood near the swings, clutching her phone in one hand, her face pale and frantic, scanning every corner as if willing her son to reappear. Luis approached, badge visible, Hunter at his side. Ma'am, I'm Officer Martinez. Tell me exactly what happened. Her voice trembled. He was just playing right here. I looked down for a second to check a text, and when I looked up, he was gone. His name is Noah. He's 5. Luis's heart clenched. He crouched down next to Hunter, who was already sniffing the ground, tail stiff, ears up. Find him, Hunter. Find Noah. Hunter took off like a shot, weaving between the swings and the jungle gym. Luis and Jamie followed close behind. Hunter paused at the gate, nose twitching furiously, then bolted across the parking lot, heading toward the far side of the shopping center, where delivery trucks idled. Luis's breath burned in his lungs as they ran, Jamie panting behind him. Hunter's paws hit the asphalt hard, claws scraping, his body tense and focused. He stopped abruptly near a dumpster behind the supermarket, barking furiously. Louis skidded to a halt. His eyes darted around. Empty soda cups, fast food wrappers, the faint smell of stale grease. But there, behind the dumpster, was a crumpled sweatshirt, bright blue with a cartoon dinosaur on the front. Noah's mom had mentioned he was wearing that today. Louis's blood ran cold. Hunter sniffed the sweatshirt, then let out a sharp bark, turning toward a side alley that led deeper into the industrial part of the complex. Louis gritted his teeth. He turned to Jamie, voice tight. "There's still moving kids right under our noses." Jamie's jaw clenched. "We gotta stop this." Louis gave Hunter a pat, his voice low and urgent. "Let's finish this, boy." Hunter's eyes locked onto the alley, his ears pinned forward. He was ready. They moved as one, officer and K9, hearts pounding. No time to waste. The hunt wasn't over. The pieces were falling into place. But the picture was far from complete. And Luis knew, deep down, the deeper they went, the darker it would get. Luis's boots pounded the asphalt as he sprinted after Hunter, the K9 a blur of black and tan muscle, his nose leading the way down the narrow alley behind the shopping center. The early evening air felt heavy, the hum of distant traffic and the flickering glow of streetlights barely registering in Luis's mind. All he could think about was the small blue sweatshirt they'd found behind the dumpster, the one Noah had been wearing. Every second counted. Every breath felt stolen. Hunter's bark echoed off the brick walls, a sound that cut to the haze of panic and adrenaline. Luis shouted over his shoulder, "Jamie, call it in. Get backup. We're moving now." Jamie's voice crackled into the radio as he kept pace, his breathing ragged. "Unit 23. We're pursuing a possible child abduction suspect, moving eastbound to the service alley behind Willow Creek. All units respond." Hunter paused for a heartbeat, nose twitching furiously, then veered left, heading toward a side door with chipped paint and a faded "Employees Only" sign. Luis didn't hesitate. He barreled forward, shoulders slamming into the door, the frame splintering with sharp crack. The door swung open, revealing a dimly lit hallway stacked with crates and cleaning supplies. The smell of bleach and old cardboard hung in the air. Hunter shot inside, barking furiously, his paws scraping against the linoleum floor. Luis followed close behind, scanning every shadow, every doorway. His heart raced, a drumbeat in his chest. This was it. He could feel it. At the far end of the hallway, a figure darted across the open space, dragging something behind him. Luis's breath caught. It was Noah. The little boy was limp, a cloth pressed over his face, his arms dangling like a rag doll. "Police! Stop!" Luis shouted, his voice booming, filling the narrow corridor. The man didn't stop. He ran faster, trying to shove open a back door. Luis unclipped Hunter's leash in one fluid motion. "Take him," he barked, and Hunter lunged forward like a missile. The German shepherd closed the distance in seconds, jaws clamping down on a man's forearm with a force that sent them both crashing into the wall. The man let out a guttural scream, dropping Noah in the process. Luis dove for the boy, cradling him in his arms. "Noah, hey buddy, it's okay. I've got you. You're safe." He peeled the cloth away from the boy's face, and Noah coughed, blinking up at him with wide, disoriented eyes. His small body trembled as tears rolled down his cheeks. Hunter held the suspect down, growling low, teeth bared, a living wall of fury and muscle. Luis glanced at the man, mid-30s, unshaven, sweat pouring down his face. He wasn't Victor Alvarado. This was someone else. Jamie skidded into the hallway, gun drawn, radio still crackling. "You good?" Luis nodded. "Hagen no right there." "Yeah, we've got him." Officers flooded the scene moments later, their voices filling the air with orders and commands. The suspect was cuffed, read his rights, and dragged to a waiting cruiser. Luis sat on the floor, holding Noah, feeling the boy's small heartbeat racing against his chest. Noah's mom arrived minutes later, breathless and sobbing, throwing her arms around her son like she'd never let go again. Luis stepped back, giving them space, his heart heavy and full at the same time. But the nagging feeling in his gut wouldn't let go. He crouched down beside Hunter, running a hand through the dog's thick fur. Hunter's body was tense, his eyes fixed on the scene as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. Jamie tapped Luis on the shoulder. "You need to see this." Luis followed Jamie to the trunk of the suspect's car, parked haphazardly near the loading docks. They popped it open, and inside was another duffel bag, similar to the one Victor had been carrying. Inside were more zip ties, another burner phone, a list of names and addresses, and something that made Luis's blood run cold. A small, folded map with a red circle drawn around Willow Creek Supercenter. Luis stared at it, his pulse thudding in his ears. This wasn't just a single incident. It wasn't even just Victor and this guy. It was bigger, organized. They were targeting this area systematically. Carefully, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. It was a text from the captain. Alvarado lawyered up, refusing to talk. "We need more." Luis exhaled slowly. The weight of it all settled heavily on his shoulders. He turned to Jamie, voice low. "They've been planning this for months, maybe years. We're just scratching the surface." Jamie nodded grimly. "And we don't have time to wait for confessions. We need to stop whoever's next on that list." Luis looked at the addresses. They were scattered across the county. Homes, schools, parks. He swallowed hard. There were kids' names on the list, too. Hunter's low growl cut through the moment. Luis looked down and saw the dog staring at the map, then shifting his gaze toward the building. His body was tense, alert, tail straight. Luis followed Hunter's stare and realized the map wasn't just for the store. It was for the whole block, the surrounding businesses, the playground, even the nearby daycare center. His chest tightened. They were watching everything. Jamie's voice was tight, barely a whisper. "How deep does this go?" Luis didn't have an answer. He reached down, gave Hunter a firm pat, and met Jamie's gaze. "As deep as we're willing to dig. And we don't stop until we find every single one of them." Hunter's tail thumped once, a silent agreement. As they packed up the scene, Luis took one last look at the crowd gathered outside the police tape. Parents held their kids tighter. Shoppers whispered in fear. Store employees shook their heads in disbelief. It wasn't just about Noah or Claudia or Maria from a photo. This was about all of them. And as long as Hunter was by his side, Luis wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The sun had long since set, leaving only the harsh glow of streetlights and the flashing blue and red of police cruisers cutting through the dark. Luis leaned against the hood of his patrol car, staring down at the crumpled map from the suspect's trunk, his mind racing. Hunter sat aside, still like a statue, eyes sharp, ears perked. Every muscle in the dog's body radiated focus, ready, waiting, unshaken by the chaos around them. Jamie approached, a paper cup of coffee in his hand. Looking worn but determined, he handed it to Luis without a word. They both sipped in silence, the weight of the night heavy on their shoulders. "You think we stopped it?" Jamie asked finally, voice low. Luis shook his head slowly. "No, we stopped this one. But this was just a branch. There's a whole tree out there. We're just starting to see the roots." Jamie nodded grimly, eyes scanning the crowd gathered beyond the crime scene tape. Parents held their kids tighter, faces pale with worry. The whole community felt it tonight. The fear, the uncertainty, and the gratitude. Luis reached down and scratched behind Hunter's ear. The dog leaned into his touch, a quiet reminder of the bond they shared. Officer and K9, protector and guide. Hunter had been the one to crack this case wide open. Without him, who knows where Noah and the others would have ended up. Luis exhaled slowly. "Let's bring Victor back in." They walked into the precinct. The quiet hum of the late night, a backdrop to their purpose. Victor Alvarado or Raul Garcia, or whoever he really was, sat in the same chairs before, but this time his posture had changed. He leaned back like a man who knew the clock was ticking, like he was waiting for a call that might never come. Luis sat down across from him, Jamie standing behind, arms crossed. Hunter lay at Luis's feet, his presence steady, a living, breathing weight that grounded Luis in the moment. Luis placed the crumpled map on the table, tapping it once. "This isn't just you. We know that. We've got names. We've got faces. We've got kids in these photos who never came home. You're going away for a long time, Victor, but you got one shot to do something right before you do. Tell us who's pulling the strings. Victor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of calculation in his gaze. He let out a slow breath, the lines on his face deepening. You think this stops with me, he rasped. You think you can tear this down with a few names on a page? You're chasing shadows, officer. There are people in places you'll never touch. People who have been doing this for years. They're not scared of you. They're not scared of anyone. Luis zo dictanut. He leaned in, voice low and steady. You're wrong. They're scared of the truth. And we're going to shine a light on every single one of you. Victor smirked. But it faltered just slightly as Hunter let out a low, warning growl that rumbled through the room like distant thunder. Luis stood, gathering the files. Enjoy yourself, Victor. You'll have plenty of time to think about the kids you left behind. Jamie followed him out, and they stepped into the cool night air. The stars overhead seemed distant, cold, and unfeeling. But Luis felt a flicker of something warmer as he watched Hunter stretch and yawn, tail flicking lazily. The next few days passed in a blur of reports, interviews, and press conferences. The community poured out their gratitude, parents stopping by the station to thank the officers, kids bringing handmade cards for Hunter, local bakeries dropping off trays of cookies. The story of the K-9 who saved the children spread like wildfire, and Hunter became a hero in their small town. But Luis knew the work wasn't done. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long golden rays across the front steps of the precinct, Luis knelt beside Hunter and looked him in the eye. You did good, buddy. Real good. Hunter wagged his tail, leaning into Luis's chest. There was a weariness in both of them, but also a quiet pride. They had made a difference. Still, Luis couldn't shake the images of those other kids, the ones in the photos they hadn't found yet. The questions gnawed at him late at night. Where were they? Were they safe? Could they still be saved? Hunter seemed to feel it, too. Every time a call came in, he was up, alert, ready to work. As the days turned into weeks, leads trickled in. Some fizzled out. Others hinted at something deeper, a network that stretched beyond their town, beyond the state. Luis knew they were just scratching the surface, but he also knew they'd keep going. For the kids who hadn't been found, for the families still waiting for answers, for every parent who hugged their child tighter after what happened at Willow Creek. And for Hunter, the dog who had followed his nose straight into the heart of darkness and helped bring a little light back into the world. Luis stood in the fading evening light, watching Hunter sniff the air, ears perked. He smiled a quiet, tired smile and whispered, "Come on, partner, we got work to do." And they walked forward together. Thank you for following this journey with us. These stories remind us that even in the darkest times, there are heroes who rise, both two-legged and four-legged. If this story moved you, tell us, what would you do if you were in Luis's shoes? How can we as a community protect our most vulnerable? The man they've been hunting for half a decade had been hiding in plain sight, wearing a name tag and scanning groceries at Willow Creek Supercenter. Luis clenched his fists. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched long across the parking lot outside, Luis stepped out into the fading light, Hunter at his side. They both paused, watching as the ambulance pulled away with Claudia and her family inside. The little girl had been saved, but how many others hadn't? Luis looked down at Hunter. We've got a long road ahead of us, partner, he murmured. Hunter's ears twitched, his eyes never leaving the darkening horizon.